This is Mrs. Davis. This is AP Computer Science. We're working on lesson 8.1, just introducing 2D arrays. And we're on the third video because we are going to be looking at this enhanced for loop with a 2D array. So it's pretty cool. All right, so the name of the class is just average array, and it has a main method. And in the main method, we create a 2D array. We'll set up in a second. And then all that happens is it prints out, it does a system out print line, and it calls this method getAverage. And it sends the array that we just made in this line. So let's create the array. We'll call it the array here. And then it's going to be a 2-row by 3-column. So it's 80, 90, 70, 20, 80, 75. All right, so we have 2 rows and 3 columns. Now, it says we're in the row, so that's what the first line did. Set that up in memory. And then system out print line, getAverage. Sent the array into this method, getAverage, and it is going to return a double, which will be the average of all the numbers in here. And so it creates a temporary pointer to the array to pass it in, and then it creates a variable called total. So we'll put that down there. Total is 0. And then you can see it has a nested for loops here. And so the first one says for int inner array A. And so this is interesting because, okay, remember how 2D arrays is an array of arrays. So this right here, the first for loop is saying for each array which is like row for each array. So look how it's done. What it does is it creates it says here's the data type, and I want a 1D array, because that's what this one is. It's a 1D array, right? The row is a 1D array. When you add the other rows in, it becomes a 2D array. But if you're just looking at the first row, it's just a 1D array. So it's saying, hey, I want a 1D array, and I'm going to call it inner array, and it's of type it's from my 2D array. So I basically said it's like this. I have like, here we go. This is 0, 1, and 2. And in this one, I have an array. It's pointing to an array of, what's the first one? 80, 90, and 70, right? And so this one is row 2, and it has its own array inside it of 20. There was only 2 of them, so 20, 80, and 75. So that's what it's talking about, saying, okay, I want to go to and get this one, and it's from A. Okay, so the data type, remember you have to say what data type it is. It's an integer array. You name it inner array. You could name it anything you want. But they're trying to say, hey, call that an array, because that's what you are. You're pulling off an array. And then it's from the 2D array. So first row of the 2D array, or the current row. Let's write that down, because that sounds good. The current row of the 2D array. Okay, that's what this says. I'm on the current row of the 2D array. So remember, inner array is my array. So then, to get into each element inside that array, which is each column, you do a second enhanced for loop, and instead now you're actually in an integer. It's not an array, because you're getting each of these. These are integers. and calling it val for a value. And then it's of type inner array, the one you just made. So you use the name that you just called your 1D array. You call that the source of your each value. So now you can see that it's going in. If the first thing it's doing is it's saying for every one, so inner array is now looking at 80, 90, 70. That's the first thing it gets. It pulls off that first one, which is the 0. Inner array 0. And it's going to 80, 90, 70. But it's not really there. It's just pointing to that right now. And so the first val pulled off will be 80. And so now total is total plus val, so total is 80. Right? And then it goes to the next, this was val. Now val goes to the next, it goes to the next val, which is 90. Val is now 90. And then total is total plus now val, so you have 170. And then val goes to, what's the last one? 70. And so then it's, 240? Okay, so total's 240, all right, and we're done with the inner array. And so that for loop is gone, so this whole thing is gone. Now total was up here above it, so total's still okay, and he's still sitting at 240 now. So then it goes back up to this enhanced array, and it's now pointing to inner array, and now it's pointing to the 1 index, which holds the second array, which is 20, 80, 75. And so then it would just do the same thing now, go back into the second for loop, right? Val is now a new val, right? That all went away, so val got reinitialized to be coming from that inner array. It is going to be 20, so val is 20, so then it would be totals to 60, etc. So at the end, after the whole total is gotten, the 2 for loops stop, and it returns total divided by a dot length times a dot 0 length. So this is like, if you're totaling you have 1, 2, 3, you have 6 boxes, so this would be like your 2 by 3 array, 2D array. And so that's how many you would have, right? Total numbers that you were adding. And so you just take the total and divide by that. All right. So that was kind of complicated, but not too bad. On the exam, assume that this is important, and I already said it, I believe, any two-dimensional TD array is in row major order. So you're to assume that the first column is row and the second column is column. The second box is column. The outer array can be thought of as the rows and the inner array as the columns. On the exam, all inner arrays will have the same length, even though it's possible in Java to have inner arrays of different lengths, also called ragged arrays. So we're talking about an array that looks like this. It would be 0, 1, 2. So it would have 3, and then the next one might have 5. It would be length 5. And so then the next one could be of length 6. And that's called a ragged array. And so this is row 1, row 2, and row 3. So each row has its own length. But remember, you can do that because this is its own array. This is an array for row 1, and so it can have its own length. And this is an array for row 2, etc. But they're saying, hey, no, every one of these, it won't be square, but it will have, every column will have the same number of Every row will have the same number of columns. So here's how you would create a jagged array. First, you would do it in 2 steps. If you would wanted one for 2 elements in the first row, 4 elements in the second, and 3 in the third row, here's how you would say, I still want a 2D array. I'm going to call my array jagged, and it's going to have 3 rows, and it's an integer array, and you leave the number of columns blank when you create it. And then you say how you talk about the first array. Anytime you're in a 2D array, you can pull off a row and just call it whatever the name of the array is, 0. So again, if I have an array called ARR and it's a 2D array, but I want the third row, I can say ARR 3. Well, it would be 2 if it's the third row. And so I can be just talking about part of the array, which is just one row of it. So again, it can have the same name, and you're just talking about the array that is in row 2. So that's where this comes in. It's saying, hey, jagged row 0 has 2 columns, and you have to use the new for each one of them, new int 2. So row 2 of jagged, which is, index row 1, so I should say, row 1, I guess, has 4 columns. So new int 4, and jagged 2, which would be your third row, has 3 columns. And that's how you would set it up. So one of the good examples is Pascal's triangle. It's fun. We're doing this in pre-cal. So some of you will be real familiar with Pascal's triangle, and I'll put that on the next video.